This episode contains discussions of domestic violence, murder, and intimate partner abuse within the LGBTQ+ community. These topics can be deeply distressing. If you or someone you know is in danger, please see the resources linked below. Welcome to Dark Rainbow's True Crime in the Community, where we shine light on the stories the world ignores. These aren't just headlines, they're lives. Case 1, Kenasia Bowie. In the heart of Jackson, Mississippi, a city rich with history and culture, 23-year-old Kenasia Bowie was a beacon of modern Southern light. To her friends, she was the magnetic force in every room, bubbly, endlessly creative, and fiercely, unconditionally loyal. Kenasia didn't just walk through life, she danced, her infectious laugh echoing long after she left a room. She carried a dream that was as bold and beautiful as her personality, to open her own hair salon. But this wasn't just about business. She envisioned a sanctuary, a beautifully decorated, safe, and affirming space where Black women could come, not just for hair care, but for community, for validation, for a moment of peace. She had a name for it already: Crowned Creations. It was a testament to her belief that every woman deserved to feel like royalty. Kenny. She had this energy, you know? It was electric. She'd look at you when you were feeling down and say, "Girl, we're gonna get you right." And she meant it. Her dream about the salon, that was everything to her. She had notebooks filled with sketches, swatches for the paint colors, even the playlist she'd have on. She'd say, "It's for us, a place where we can just be." She saw a need for that in Jackson, a place that was truly ours. From the time she was a little girl, she was always making things beautiful. Whether it was drawing on the walls with her crayons or giving her dolls new hairstyles with yarn, she had a gift for seeing the potential in everything and everyone. And her heart, she was so loyal. If she loved you all the way. There were no half measures with my baby. But behind the bright smile and ambitious plans, a shadow was lengthening. Kenasia was deeply entangled in a relationship that had begun with promise, but was now curdling into something toxic and dangerous, threatening to extinguish the very light she so generously shared with the world. The relationship began with the dizzying excitement of new love. Her partner was charming, attentive, and seemed to adore Kenasia's vibrant spirit. But the first red flag, nearly invisible at the time, appeared as a subtle jab disguised as concern. A comment about the food she was eating, a suggestion they should get healthy together. Soon these suggestions sharpened into cruel critiques about her body. The fat shaming wasn't just a weapon, it was the primary tool of control. It started in private, chipping away at her self-worth behind closed doors. I remember the first time I met her partner, something felt off, too smooth. A few months in, we all went out for my birthday. Kenasia ordered her favorite dessert and her partner just looked at her and said, loud enough for us all to hear, "Are you sure you need that?" The air just went out of the room. Kenasia tried to laugh it off, but I saw the light in her eyes dim. After that, she started making excuses not to come out with us. This public humiliation became a recurring tactic designed to isolate and shame her. Friends noticed the shift. Kenasia's once joyful social media presence became a ghost town. The colorful selfies were replaced by vague, melancholic quotes. Sometimes a post would hint at a deep, underlying pain, only to be deleted hours later, as if she was being monitored. This is the insidious nature of coercive control, a pattern of behavior that seeks to strip a person of their freedom and sense of self. It's an invisible cage, and for Kenasia the bars were being forged with every belittling comment and controlling demand. Her partner's influence grew, a suffocating presence that methodically severed her ties to the very people who loved her and could have helped her. Over time, the emotional abuse escalated into explosive arguments that could no longer be contained within their apartment walls. Neighbors grew accustomed to the sounds of shouting matches, a stark contrast to the laughter that once characterized Kenasia. She knew she was in danger. On several occasions, she found the courage to try and leave. She confided in her closest friends, her voice trembling over the phone as she spoke of her fears. She would pack a bag, her heart pounding with a mix of terror and hope for a future free from torment. She called me one night whispering. She said, "I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore." She had her bag packed and was waiting for her partner to fall asleep. I told her to come straight to my house. I waited all night. She never came. The next day she texted me. We worked it out. I overreacted. I knew she hadn't. I knew that was her partner talking, not her. Each attempt to escape was met with a calculated, manipulative response. Her partner would pivot from rage to desperate pleas, promising to change, crying and threatening self-harm. When that failed, the pleas would morph into chilling threats against Kenasia herself. She was trapped in a vicious cycle of hope and despair, a psychological prison where every escape route led back to her abuser. Experts call the period when a victim tries to leave separation violence, and it is statistically the most lethal time in an abusive relationship. Kenasia was in the epicenter of that danger. On the night of the fatal incident, the argument was louder than ever. Neighbors heard shouting, the sound of something heavy crashing to the floor, then a single piercing scream, followed by a chilling, absolute silence. A silence that felt heavier and more final than any noise before it. After a few minutes of that deafening quiet, a neighbor dialed 911. When police arrived and forced their way into the apartment, it was too late. Kenasia's bright, promising life had been stolen by the person she once trusted with her heart. In the aftermath, a wave of grief and fury washed over Jackson. Kenasia's family and friends, shattered by the loss, refused to let her become just another statistic. They gathered for candlelight vigils, their flames a fragile defiance against the darkness that had taken her. They shared memories of her laugh, her kindness, her boundless dreams. On social media, the hashtag #JusticeForKenasia went viral, a digital rallying cry demanding accountability and shining a light on the circumstances of her death. Seeing all those people holding candles for my daughter, it breaks my heart all over again. But it also shows me how many lives she touched. They took my baby, but they can't take away the love people have for her. We have to get justice. For her. For every other girl who is scared and silent right now. Her life had to mean something more than this ending. Kenasia's story is a tragic reminder of a crisis that is too often ignored. When we talk about intimate partner violence, we often fail to see the specific dangers faced by Black women, and especially Black queer women. They exist at a dangerous intersection of racism, sexism, and homophobia. The systems designed to protect victims often fail them, dismissing their pain or even criminalizing them. Body shaming isn't just mean, it's a tactic of violence. We need more resources, more shelters that are affirming for LGBTQ+ people, and more community awareness. Kenasia's death must be a catalyst for real systemic change. The tragedy sparked urgent, long overdue conversations about the nuances of body shaming and psychological abuse within queer relationships. Topics too often left in the shadows due to fear and stigma. For Kenasia's community, the loss was immeasurable. Her partner was arrested and charged, but the legal process is a long and arduous road. Yet in the midst of their grief, her loved ones are determined to build a legacy of hope. Her dream of crowned creations has not died with her. Her friends are working to establish a foundation in her name, one that will provide resources and support for young LGBTQ+ people in Jackson experiencing intimate partner violence. Kenasia's light was violently extinguished, but her spirit endures, in every vigil, every demand for justice, and every call for a world where everyone is safe to love and live freely. Case 2 brings us to Sacramento, California, and the story of JoJo Williams and Laverda, better known as V. Robinson. Theirs was a love story as real, vibrant, and complicated as any. They were pillars in their circle, two women whose lives were deeply intertwined, sometimes as friends, sometimes as partners, but always inevitably finding their way back to one another. JoJo was the fire, her laughter a force of nature that could fill any room, her energy drawing people in. V was the calm, a grounding presence with a quiet strength and a way of making everyone she met feel truly seen and heard. Together, they created a sanctuary of acceptance and joy. In the tight-knit Sacramento community they called home, they weren't just known, they were cherished for their boundless generosity, their open hearts, and the unwavering support they offered to anyone in need. Their bond was a testament to a love that defied easy labels, a partnership built on a foundation of deep, abiding friendship. You couldn't know one without knowing the other. JoJo had this big, booming laugh, and V had this smile that could just calm your soul. They were that couple, you know, the one you looked at and thought, that's real. They argued like cats and dogs sometimes, but the love was never in question. They were planning things, looking toward the future. They were supposed to grow old together, that was the plan. But that plan, and the vibrant future it promised, would be violently erased on a gloomy April night in 2024. The setting was their shared apartment, a place that had been a haven for them and their friends. The evening was unremarkable until it wasn't. The catalyst for the tragedy was a man they both knew intimately, Ricky Hunter, JoJo and V's mutual acquaintance. His presence that night was not a coincidence, It was a confrontation born of jealousy and an inability to let go. Neighbors later reported hearing a heated argument escalate outside the apartment. Hunter's voice, loud and aggressive, shattered the evening quiet. JoJo and V's voices were heard too, not matching his anger but pleading, trying to de-escalate, telling him to leave. But reason was lost to rage. In a final horrific act of control, Hunter produced a handgun. The sound of gunfire echoed through the complex, a series of sharp, brutal reports that ended the argument and 2 precious lives. When police responded to the flood of 911 calls, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. Both JoJo and V had been struck. Neither survived the attack. The sanctuary they had built together became their crime scene. In the immediate aftermath, the Sacramento Police Department worked swiftly. Based on witness statements and the known history of domestic turmoil, they quickly identified Ricky Hunter as the sole suspect. A warrant was issued for his arrest on 2 counts of murder and a citywide manhunt began. His face was broadcast on every local news channel. But the pursuit of justice in a courtroom would never come to pass. Before he could be apprehended and forced to answer for his actions, Hunter was found in his vehicle, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. This is what we call justice denied. From a legal standpoint, the case is closed. But for the families and the community, it leaves a gaping wound. A trial provides a public record, a narrative of what happened. It allows for evidence to be presented, for testimony to be heard, for a jury to validate the loss with a guilty verdict. A murder-suicide rips that possibility away. There is no day in court, no accountability, no answers, only the silence left behind by the perpetrator. Their case faded from the headlines almost as quickly as it appeared, another tragic statistic in the epidemic of intimate partner violence, but their community refused to let their story end in silence. Friends, loved ones, and activists gathered, their candlelight pushing back against the darkness. They shared memories, they cried, and they raged. The names JoJo and V became a rallying cry, not just to mourn their loss but to shine a harsh, necessary light on the specific dangers faced by Black women in LGBTQ+ relationships. Intimate partner violence in the queer community, and especially violence against Black queer women, is chronically underreported and ignored. Victims often fear they won't be believed or respected by law enforcement. There's a systemic failure to protect them. So when we lose people like JoJo and V, it's not just a personal tragedy, it's a failure of the systems meant to keep them safe. We have to say their names, we have to tell their stories loudly, because the media so often won't. According to the Human Rights Campaign, Black transgender and cisgender women face some of the highest rates of fatal violence in the country, often at the hands of partners or acquaintances. Yet their stories rarely receive sustained national attention. The community's fight is to ensure that JoJo and V are not remembered as a footnote in a crime blotter, but for the brilliant, loving light they brought into the world. They deserved a lifetime of happiness together. They deserved to be remembered for their laughter, their love, and their lives, not just for the violent way they were taken. Their legacy now lies in the continued fight for awareness, protection, and justice for all those who live at the dangerous intersections of racism, sexism, and homophobia. Shelby, North Carolina, July 18, 2025. The night air was thick with summer heat, but on Baker Drive it was shattered by the sound of 2 gunshots. Neighbors rushed to their windows, hearts pounding. Moments later, deputies arrived to find Tamia Logan, just 29, lying in her front yard, her life ended by a single fatal wound. Beneath the porch light of her family home, her future was stolen in an instant. But Tamia was more than a headline. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. Born and raised in Shelby, she was known for her infectious laugh and her fierce loyalty. She loved music, late-night drives, and the feeling of family gathered around a kitchen table. Her friends called her Lil Mia because even as an adult she never lost her childlike sense of wonder. She was the kind of person who would show up for you no matter what, recalls her childhood friend Jasmine. If you needed a ride, a meal, or just someone to listen, Tamia was there. She had this way of making you feel seen, even on your worst days. Tamia's journey was not always easy. As a Black queer woman in a small southern town, she faced challenges that many could not imagine. But she was determined to live authentically, to love openly, and to build a life on her own terms. Her social media was a vibrant collage of selfies, music clips, and messages of hope for others struggling to find acceptance. But behind the bright posts, Tamia was struggling. Her love triangle with her ex-Unique and Marlo Anthony Johnson was complicated, marked by passion, jealousy, and increasingly, conflict. Friends noticed the warning signs: sudden mood swings, withdrawn behavior, cryptic posts about heartbreak and betrayal. "We all saw the posts," says Tamia's cousin Marcus. "There were fights online, threats, people taking sides. It was messy and it was public. But nobody thought it would end like this." The night of the shooting, Tamia was reportedly trying to move on, seeking a fresh start, maybe even healing. But the violence that arrived at her door was not random. It was the culmination of months of tension, jealousy, and unresolved pain. When the shots rang out, neighbors called 911 in a panic. Police and paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. The porch, once a place of laughter and family gatherings, became a crime scene. News of Tamia's death spread quickly. Local reporters gathered outside her home, their cameras capturing the grief and disbelief of a community in shock. Social media erupted with tributes, hashtags, and calls for justice. "I just want people to know who she really was," says Tamia's mother, her voice trembling. "She was more than what happened to her. She was my baby. She was loved." The investigation moved swiftly. Cleveland County authorities, working across several counties, identified Marlo Anthony Johnson, 37, as the primary suspect. Detectives pieced together evidence from social media, phone records, and witness statements. For days, the community was left reeling, fearful, broken, seeking answers. On August 5th, nearly 3 weeks after the shooting, Johnson was arrested in Charlotte and charged with first-degree murder in Tamia's death. The case drew attention from local news and advocacy groups. But as the days passed, the headlines faded. For Tamia's loved ones, the pain remained raw, the questions unanswered. "We want justice, but we also want change," says local activist Brianna Lee. Tamia's story is not unique. Black queer women face violence at alarming rates, and too often their stories are ignored. Experts say intimate partner violence in the LGBTQ+ community is chronically underreported. Victims fear they won't be believed, or that their identities will be used against them. For Black queer women, the risks are even greater, at the intersection of racism, sexism, and homophobia. "The systems designed to protect victims often fail them," explains Dr. Angela Carter, a specialist in intimate partner violence. "There's a lack of resources, a lack of understanding, and a lack of safe spaces for LGBTQ+ survivors, especially in rural communities." In the weeks after Tamia's death, her friends and family organized candlelight vigils. They gathered in parks and church halls, holding photos, sharing stories, and demanding justice. The glow of hundreds of candles lit up the night, a fragile defiance against the darkness. On social media, the hashtag #JusticeForTamia trended locally. Friends posted memories, shared photos, and called for accountability. Some wrote about their own experiences with abuse, breaking the silence that so often surrounds these tragedies. "We have to talk about it," says Brianna Lee. "We have to say their names, tell their stories, and demand better, because silence is deadly." In the months that followed, Tamia's family worked to keep her memory alive. They started a scholarship fund in her name supporting young LGBTQ+ people in Shelby. Her story became a rallying cry for change, a call to action for safer communities, better resources, and real accountability. But for those who loved her, the loss is still fresh. "I miss her every day," Jasmine says quietly. "I wish she could see how many people are fighting for her now. I wish she knew how much she mattered." Tamia's story is a reminder: this was not just a crime. This was love twisted, a community silenced, and a life cut short. Yet in the face of tragedy, her name is spoken, her legacy carried forward by those who refuse to let her be forgotten. If you or someone you know is experiencing intimate partner violence, resources are available. You are not alone. Tamia's story is a call to action, for justice, for compassion, and for change. Kenasia, JoJo and V, Tamia, 3 names, 3 stories erased from the national conversation, but here they are spoken. If these stories moved you, share this episode. Subscribe to Dark Rainbows so their truths are never forgotten, until every name is heard.